Welcome back to Jeff's Garage, where today I'm going to do diagnosis on my car's engine and figure out why it doesn't want to run. When I rebuilt the carburetor, it didn't want to run like it didn't before. So I know I still got a few adjustments to make on the carburetor to try to get that thing right. That probably is part of it, but I want to figure out whether the engine still has compression, and I want to figure out whether it's getting the right amount of fuel and also getting the right amount of spark. So those are the things we're going to try to do today. For a compression tester, you can't use a standard compression tester with a rotary. You've got to have a special one. I've got one of those, and we're going to figure out how to use it today and see if the motor is still good, and then if that turns out to be good, then we'll go to the fuel and we'll go to the spark. Between one of those, we'll figure out something. Maybe it's all of them, maybe it's none of them. We'll have fun trying to get there. Okay, now to do this test, we have the tester here. It's got all the adapters needed. Haven't used it yet because, you know, I recently got it. Got all the adapters needed though to hook it into the spark plug holes. So just got to make sure we do this correctly. So there's a certain spot to hook it into to make sure it reads correctly and how to do it right.
The instructions state that it's best to have the engine to operating temperature to get the most accurate reading. I am unable to warm the engine, but the instructions do state this will cause the compression test readings to be inflated by about 10 to 15 psi with it being cold. The adapters go into the trailing spark plug hole, so they have to be removed. I removed both of them so I can test both housings.
That might be a good reason as to why it's not running. These are the trailing, but that's not very clean. Part of the investigation we're going to do today.
You also need to leave the leading spark plugs in, that way the compression test is accurate and there are no false readings.
There's a calibration procedure it's got to do, so let's fire it up. It's already calibrated. Let's get it cranking.
Rotor number 2.
Well, I'm not going to bother with the fuel pressure in the ignition. The results of this test indicate the motor needs to be rebuilt. And so, that's going to have to happen. And you'll see it here on Jeff's Garage.
We're going to try it again with following directions of wide open throttle. Rotor number 2, wide open throttle. This motor is good. It's amazing when you follow directions how much better things work. Because I did not follow that one, where it says throttle open on the first numbers. Now they are much better. They are above, they're between 100 and 110, which is considered a good motor. So now I guess it's on to figuring out whether it's fuel or spark. I think I'm going to start with spark first because those spark plugs looked terrible.
Okay, now we're going to do the ohm reading for this, and it's going to check between these two. Mazda's got a spec for that, and it says 1.35 ohms plus or minus a little bit. So as long as we're within that range, it'll be good. There's also, you can check between the positive one of these terminals here and this and get an ohm reading. That should be some usually an average of about 8,000, but Mazda doesn't specifically call that one out. So some vehicles do, sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. I'm going to check that anyways because that's another indication that there can be an issue. So let's go. What do we have here? Yeah, see, I'm seeing 1 ohm, so that's perfect. So let's find out exactly which one I need to deal with. I do believe we need to go this way with the other one. Yeah, see, that's a good number there too. That 8 dot, like that number right there, is usually a good sign that this coil is in good shape right there. Good number. It's a little higher, but I think we're fine. Now we're going to check some fuel things. I'm going to check the fuse on it, on the fuel pump. It looks good right here. It's one of the ones we had to remove to do the compression test anyways, along with the main engine fuse here. I'm going to go ahead and install both of those so that way I can do this part. Okay, those are both back in. Put the cover back up so I don't break it. And now I'm going to turn the vehicle on to see if the fuel pump kicks on. Should hear a buzzing noise because it's pretty loud in this car. And it helps if you hook up the battery. Okay, let's try this again with the battery hooked up. Lights are on, everything's turning on, but I don't hear the buzzing noise in the back of the car. Well, time to figure out why. Fuel pump for this car is located underneath this cubby, so I got to take the cubby off here to get to it, and then it'll be accessible underneath the hatch right there. So let's go. This right here is the fuel pump wiring. It goes down over through here, down through the floor into the fuel pump underneath the vehicle. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this connection right now and check to see if we have 12 volts or whatever battery voltage happens to be right now. I'm going to put in the voltmeter settings. Check to see if we have voltage at this point. It really doesn't matter which way you put the terminals. One is positive, one's negative, but okay. That means the fuel pump should be turning. It's got 11.8 volts. It should be turning. And I hear no pump. Well, today I did get the engine compression test done, and after initially thinking it was dead, I figured out how to do it the right way, and it is actually in good shape. Then I went to diagnosing a couple of things electrically. The spark plugs, they probably need to be replaced. They're kind of nasty, but I cleaned them up. Coils are good. I'll do the distributor after I get the new fuel pump, because I tested my fuel pump. I've got almost 12 volts there. It's getting the battery voltage. It's not turning on. So I need to get a new fuel pump. So we'll get one of those put in and then try to test it, try to fire it. If it doesn't want to fire, then I'll go through the ignition system a little bit farther. Welcome back to Jeff's Garage, where it's a bit windy here today, but we're going to go ahead and install the fuel pump anyways. I've got it. It finally came after a round-trip adventure to Hawaii. So we're going to go ahead and get it in. Looks a bit different than the factory one. We'll go over the differences, but it will work. This is an original Mazda one for a 79 to 81. It'll work with a little bit of modification between it and my car, but it shouldn't be too hard, so let's get going. So here's the fuel pump bracket right here. We got to remove a few bolts to get it out. We got two here, and then we got these two right over here that we got to take off, and then we can take the plate off, and on the other side of it will be the fuel pump. It's also mounted on here by a couple of bolts, and we'll see how. That's the part that we have to get creative to make sure it fits.
Alright, now that I've got both pumps right side by side, let's compare them a little bit. We can see right away that the outlet points a different direction and the mounting is different. This one is meant to mount flush on it, and this one has some isolators. I think on this one I can open up the holes a little bit to fit these parts. I'm going to try to do that here in a minute. Otherwise, there's nothing electrically to modify. The connector's the same, even has a little grommet on there to fill the hole in the body. So once I get these holes opened up to see if I can get it in there, I'll go ahead and get back underneath there and mount it in there, and we'll turn it on. Try to see if I can get these grommets to fit over here. I need to get these out, and then I can try to get some measurements of that circle and where it's located to try to see if I can't open this hole up. So let's try to get those out.
After determining which position the inlet and outlet were on my original pump, I figured out the direction to put the new pump in so it would fit. I decided it would be best if I didn't drill the mounting bracket on the new pump and just use the bushings from the original pump as spacers to give enough height to attach the fuel lines.
Well, I don't like the way it appears to be right here. I don't like the way this part, to get the pump to lay flat, I don't like the way it hits. So now I wonder what I could do to try to make this thing fit. If I can try to get this to be reshaped like this, and that'll sit down right there. It's not comfortable with the way it's on there either, but I'm gonna leave it down like this for now. We're gonna go ahead and do a leak test to see how this works and see if it even solves the problem.
Get this plugged in here real quick.
See if we can hear it. Making noises.
After fiddling around for a bit, I figure out the plug wires are not in the right firing order. I rearrange them on the distributor cap and then we'll give it another shot.
She runs, but she's a chimney. Well, it ran, but that doesn't mean it's right. It was an awful lot of smoke when it started. It did clear up as it got hotter, so maybe just because I need to run it a little bit and get the oil rings freed up, I might even need to put some like Marvel Mystery Oil through it. I'll do some research on that to see if I can't get it to clean that up. I do need to get the carburetor tuned up because it was running, but not running very well. There's some adjustments I need to do to get the idle right, to try to get the, I also need to try to get the floats in the right spot because they're not quite right. But now that I know it runs, those are the adjustments that I can do. And if that doesn't work and the smoke doesn't go away, then there will be that rebuild here on Jeff's Garage. People can see what I'm doing.
That's gonna be in the video.
Not necessarily.